the to continue our conversation about the snowmaking. So when they had the snowmaking, we'll just call it the system installed. I'm assuming and I'm just curious about like the strategy, like for each season. So was it literally like we're on standby, and as soon as the weather's cold, we're going to start making snow, or was there any kind of strategy about when you're going to start and that type of thing as far as making the snow? Because I'm assuming that once you had that technology, that allowed you to to start your ski season sooner than waiting on Mother Nature.
Yes. So there were two things. One, there was a separate electrical service for the water pump than there was for the general area, general resort area. So it was on a different meter, and all of the meters were, or all the electrical billing was in part governed by the demand. So if you did electricity in 1 month, then your bill was substantially lower, even if you just used a little bit of electricity. But if you didn't use a lot of electricity, so the pump house would have, I know they had a couple of little lights down there and a heater, but running the pump itself used a lot more electricity than anything else that was involved with the pump house. So there was a billing date, and I can't remember if it was the 15th of the month or the 20th of the month, but we would never run the pump before that date, because it would, even if you'd only used it to just fill the pumps, it would show up as a peak demand, and your bill would be substantially more than just the small amount of electricity that you'd use to run some other sort of incidentals. Well, so we didn't make snow before that date, and then there was always a decision come the 15th of March or the 20th of March, whatever that date was, or even into February, as to whether or not we had enough natural snow and enough man-made snow as to whether or not we were going to continue making snow or cut it off and just let nature take us through the rest of the year. So there was that consideration. The general resort itself, it required use of the toes and things in order to put T-bars on and other stuff, and a lot of other electrical equipment that ran around there more through the year. So we didn't really look at that part as being a limitation, but it was the pump house that was a limitation.
Okay. So what was the strategy of where you make the snow? If I remember from talking to Murray, I mean, obviously you had what you had as far as the infrastructure of where you could make snow. Was there any strategy on the best way to go about where do we start, and that type of stuff?
Yeah, we would make snow on, a single run first. And I can't remember the name of it. I know nobody else seems to be able to remember the name of it, but as you went up the ski lift, the run on our left was the most consistent pitch from top to bottom, although it changed, of course, but it was the most consistent pitch, and it was closest to the hydrants, and the top pole mounted gun that was there was on that side of the lift. And we would have every snowmaking gun on that run first, and we would try and cover that run. It was close to the tow line as well, so we could potentially make some snow both on the tow line and that run, and without moving without moving the guns around an awful lot.
So when you
And-
say, I don't mean to interrupt you there, but if you got off the main lift line and you went to the left, like you were saying, I remember
Yeah.
that picture of the boom mounted snow gun.
Mhm.
Was the bridge there that you could get underneath the T-bar? So would you basically stay on that side of the lift line all the way down that run?
And go underneath that bridge, yeah.
Okay, I got you. All right, but and then, like you're saying, you're not sure if there was ever an official name for that?
Well, I know there was a name, and I can't say for sure. The only name that I think of it occasionally is Orchard, because maybe there was an apple tree on it or something. I don't know.
Okay,
I'm not really sure about that. It was between the fifth line run.
yep. So was that
And this-
actually a name of a trail, the fifth line? Was that a,
Yeah,
okay,
in between the fifth line run and the toe. That trail went down that line. And then you could also go on the fifth line run and not go around the big loop that was originally acquired. There was another cut that came back over that you could go underneath the bridge there as well. So about where the top of the small T-bar coming out of the parking lot was, there was another short run. I'm pretty sure it had a name as well, that you could take to traverse from the fifth line run over to the run that went underneath the bridge.
yeah, I think I saw that when I was up there, that accessibility or whatever. So, so was that typically the strategy then, was always to start on that particular run off the left side, just because of where all the hydrants and that pole mounted gun, I'm assuming that allowed you to put the most snow on the ground in the quickest amount of time doing that?
Yeah, in order to try and open as early as possible, we would cover that run, and then we would move over to Murray's run. And that was because some of the areas of Murray's run were a little bit harder to cover than others.
So-
It had one area where there was a lot of springs in the run, so the ground stayed warm in that area a little longer. And by that time, you were hoping to get natural snow, and you wouldn't have to make so much too. So
Right. So I guess a follow-on question to the snowmaking starting on that side, would it be a top to bottom? Was there any rationale of, like, where you started? And then the other follow-on is, how many snow guns, like, let's just say if you're going to start at the top, how many snow guns could you have in a section as you're piecing your way through trying to put snow, all on that trail?
yeah, we for sure needed snow at the top more than the bottom, because if we had natural snow, it would stay in the bottom more, and at the top of the hill, natural snow didn't stay around so much. I believe that with the pole mounted gun, we had 6 units, and we would put all 5 of those units basically like one hydrant apart from the top towards the bottom. And once we could move the snow along until it was all connected, then we would take the top gun and move it down to the next hydrant that was available, and basically work to cover from top to bottom of the hill.
Yeah. Did those guns at that time, did they have a pretty good throw? How far out? I mean, was that a challenge? You had your 5 guns working on that first top section. Did that take a lot of work moving each one of those guns around to kind of complete to get the snow, or were you allowed to, or could you use like a piece of equipment to push snow around?
We could move them ourselves. We didn't really push snow around very much. The technologies in the plows or blades at the front were much simpler. Than you could angle it side to side and up and down, but you couldn't gather snow the way they do today. And move at great distances to cover. So it may have been developing, but we didn't have it at Valley Schuss. Our blade was like a straight blade. A lot of the blades are very U-shaped now, and they can tip them back and forth, and they can move snow around a lot. So we relied on moving the guns as much as we could. So when it was really cold, we might have had to move the guns every 20 minutes
Oh, wow. So that's pretty
in
labor
order
intensive.
that a pile of snow didn't build up too much.
Yeah.
You always made, you wanted to try and make as much snow as you could, but you didn't want it to be wet so that it turned into ice when you finished. So you would control the water so that the snow was somewhat dry, but still accumulating as fast as possible. If you left it too long in one place, the weight of the snow on top would start to squeeze the water out of what was underneath, and ice would
Okay.
start to flow out and be the end of it. So it was pretty much, you wanted to move them often.
So, that's the fascinating thing. I like talking to you guys about that actually made the snow. So that reference you made right there, was that something that somebody passed along to you when they were teaching you how to make snow, or is that something you learned on your own?
Yeah, no, I think somebody probably gave it that. I know the snowmaking had been in place before I ever was there. So some of the part-time people that came, they had made snow before. I remember two brothers, and can't remember if their last name was Cade, and there was another Moffat. So they had made some snow before, and they knew we had to do this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the thing that I'm thinking about, if you're not trained properly, you don't know what you don't know, and if you're shooting snow out of the gun, somebody's like, "Hey, things are great,"
Yeah.
but it's kind of the art and science of making it that really
There-
fascinates me.
there were a lot of accidents.
When you say what do you mean by accident?
We flooded spots, and we
Oh.
we learned through experience that we better not do it that way, because we ended up having to come back and fix it,
Yeah.
do it all over again. So
So with that technique, then, would you basically just try to lay down a few inches? Is that what the?
yeah, I'm gonna say 8 to
Okay.
12 inches, maybe. That was somewhere where we're targeting.
Okay. And so you said at one time you may have had like 5 of the guns on the tricycle gear and the pole mounted. And
Yes.
there was basically just 2 of you working all those?
Yep.
Wow. So you were busy then, having to.
You'd have to, I mean, they were all on the same hill at that time, right? So
Right.
you would work your way from the top to the bottom, and then maybe go in and grab a cup of coffee, get back up to the top. And you always had to watch the temperature, because if the temperature was falling quickly, you had to go to each gun and give them more water so that they didn't freeze up and throw those ice particles a lot. And if it really built up with ice, then it would start to run the fans out of balance.
Oh yeah.
And you could hear that if you came up to one and it wasn't running properly, it was running out of balance. I know that run the first year that we were making snow on that run. The first year I was there, 73. That was the first year we made snow on that run.
Okay.
Because there had been not hydrants, but had been a couple of electrical panels or points where we plugged the fans in, installed that summer before I was there. And the guns in Canada all ran on 550 volts. and 550 volts is a three-phase electricity. And with three phases, if you don't have your phases connected correctly, the motors run in the opposite direction. And the people that had installed those electrical panels that year, on at least two of them had reversed the phases.
Oh, jeez. So I'm assuming you found out the hard way?
Yeah, you found out the hard way. The first I remember was we always turned the fans on running. We would connect all the hoses up, turn the fans on running before we started the water out of the hydrants, because you didn't, if you got the water in the hydrant where you couldn't run the snow, then you had the potential that the hose might start to get ice particles forming in it while the water wasn't going through. If the ice particles started to form, they pack up at a restriction point where the nozzle was for the hose or in the gun itself. And so we would start the fans up. I remember one of the guys, I don't think it was me, but being at the gun, starting the gun running, and then the person, I remember opening the hydrant. I'm sure I opened the hydrant. And so I opened the hydrant, and when the water got to the gun, it was running backwards. So just like made that person disappear, or it was just under a cloud of water. No, that was.
Were you guys looking at each other like going, what's going on?
Yeah, that's right. Everybody stopped. And I'm sure that we probably froze the hoses after that.
I could see how you guys would be looking at each other like, what'd you do? I didn't do anything. I just turned it on.
Yeah.
So when I was asking you earlier about the throws, so if you're starting the snowmaking process and you're starting at the top of the hill and working your way down, would you literally have to go out across the ski runs, or would you be at the same place, just kind of like you were saying, work your way down? Did it have?
It was kind of like a zigzag. We would go, across and back and forth, and point this way for a while, point that way for a while. You always had to have the wind primarily at the back of the gun, so you could point it towards the left side of the run. Let it run there for a while, move it back 5 feet and point it towards the right side of the run. Just sort of zigzag your way down like that.
Okay. But what would you guess would be the width of, I mean, would it be literally the width of the ski run, or would you?
No, more like about 30 feet maybe.
Okay, just to kind of make it accessible that you could.
Yeah, and of course, primarily there was more snow in the middle than there was on the edges.
Right. But it was something that you could open up because there was enough snow that somebody could ski down it or whatever.
We always had a fair amount of natural snow then too. Even though we were battling the elements. Today, like the ski areas run everything on man-made snow. They can't have a trail with natural snow because it just, you wouldn't be able to get from top to bottom all year long. You'd be right out of business.
So do you remember under ideal conditions when when Mother Nature warned how long it would take you to do that particular run that we were just talking about, to put snow on it?
I think we could cover the whole thing in about 3 days, maybe even 2. And, we started making snow in the middle of December, say, right? So the best snowmaking conditions were in the middle of February. You could make a lot more snow in the middle of February than you could in the middle of December, and you're far more likely to be able to run it 24 hours a day.
Okay.
In December, a lot of times we'd start making snow at 10 o'clock at night, and then we'd have to shut down at 6 o'clock in the morning because it was getting too warm.
As far as the weather, do you remember, was that something, like as far as the temperature and the humidity, did you use any kind of instrumentation, or was it just your experience with the gun and seeing how it was, you know, how efficient or what it was producing is how you determined, you know, if it was good, bad, or, you know, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, no, as far as running the equipment itself, it was just all as to observing how the snow is being made, how fast it's falling out of the, because if it's too wet, it's going to fall quickly to the ground. If it's too dry, then you start to freeze the guns up, and so you hear that out of balance running. So that was primarily it. We didn't have any equipment for that. We did have Lloyd had gotten some sort of equipment that sounded an alarm when it got to a certain temperature. So we could go to sleep at 9 o'clock at night, and if it got to be, I guess we were working mostly in Fahrenheit. Then if it got to be 25 degrees Fahrenheit, the alarm would ring and everybody would call each other, and you'd get up and run outside and make snow for as long as you could. Yeah, you'd have some warning from the forecasts, of course, before
Right.
that.
Yeah. With the advantage of snowmaking, do you remember in general what were your like first opening days or opening weekends or whatever? Typically, were you able to open in late November, just, you know, December? What do you remember anything about that?
I don't remember ever opening in November, but for sure we would be open in December. But I don't ever remember not being open for a Christmas break. I believe that during the years I was there, we were always over Christmas break. So probably mid-December, we would have our first weekends.
Yeah. I'm assuming that was probably a pretty big goal to be open for the holidays for
Yes.
Christmas.
Yeah, there was always a Christmas camp in the ski school and items like that. So you wanted to be open. People were on holidays, they wanted to ski. And
Right. Back then, were you just, what was the days that you were open? Was it just the weekends or?
yeah, we were open Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Okay.
And the members, we had an agreement with a hill called Loretto, which was further down the valley, actually, near the village of Loretto. It's actually outside of what we would call the Hockley Valley today, but there was a membership agreement with members there that our members could ski at their hill, which was open Wednesday, Saturday, and Sunday. So they could ski. Our members could ski there on Wednesdays. Their members could ski at our location on Fridays.
No, one of the things when I look at ski industries today versus back then, what was the rationale of only being open on the weekend? Was it because of the labor? Because everybody had a full-time job and you couldn't get people to come work during the week, or
a fair amount of that, but also you couldn't generate enough ticket sales through the week.
You could not?
No, to pay for the labor.
Gotcha. So the demand wasn't there.
Yeah, even I think most Fridays that we were open, we were mostly skied by members. I don't think we had a lot of ticket sales on Fridays.
Okay.
Through the winter time, on Saturdays and Sundays, the whole time I was there, when we called ourselves a semi-private club, we would sell a limited number of tickets to the public.
Oh, as well as having the members or whatever.
As well as the members there.
Okay.
And then we would, race down, we'd close the public ticket sales because we didn't want the lift lineups to be any longer than 20 minutes I think, 20 minutes.
Okay.
So we would race down to the Hockley Road, to the big sign that we had down there, and hang a sign up that said, closed to members only.
Okay. Where was that sign at that you're referring to?
So on the west side of Hockley Road, no, west side of the 5th line at Hockley Road. So the southwest corner.
Okay.
It was kind of as I remember it, I believe that it was 2 poles that were kind of on a bit of a V shape, and then there was a barn board sign with Valley Schuss, in carved wooden letters, green.
I don't think I've seen a picture of that, but after you described it, for some reason, I think I remember that. I wonder what happened to that sign.
Yeah.
So do you, when we're talking about the weekends, did you have any idea of like how many people you'd run through on a weekend or on a Saturday or Sunday? Any kind of numbers of how many skiers?
Yeah, the public, I think we would sell up to 120 tickets to the public, and there'd be that many members, probably closer to 200 members and their families there.
So
we might have 350 people on the hill.
So what was the capacity of the lifts that time to get people up the hills?
Oh boy, I never thought of that. I probably knew it at the time, but
because back then you had as soon as you pulled in the parking lot, there was a T-bar there, right? And then there was the T-bar by the chalet.
yes.
And then there was that other T-bar kind of like behind the chalet that went up. So you essentially had 3 T-bars.
Yeah, not when I started there.
Okay.
There was only the 2 T-bars and the cable tows when I started. So we installed the 3rd T-bar that we had brought from
Is that the one from
Twin Hearth.
Aspen? Or Twin?
Aspen, yes, sorry. They called it Aspen. The new owners, after Doug Frid sold it, they renamed it Aspen.
So was it Twin Hearts before then?
Yeah, it was Twin Hearts before that.
Okay. That's one thing. I still ask her like questions over and over again because because of how things changed. So it started off as Twin Hearts, then it went to Aspen.
Yeah.
Okay. And
I believe that it closed in 75. I think calling it Aspen made it very unpopular.
oh, the name was unpopular.
Yeah, well, people I think had much higher expectations than what the hill could deliver.
Are you meaning like because of Aspen, Colorado, or?
Yes, because of Aspen, Colorado. So,
Okay, I could definitely see there's a little difference there. So
yes, substantial difference. Yeah.
yeah.
So that tow, one of the summers that I worked there, we took that tow down from that location. There was a couple of pieces that we brought straight to Valley Schuss, but the other, all of the towers were sent to the other company that Lloyd represented, Valley Ski Ways, I think they would call themselves at that time, the tow manufacturer. So it was a sort of a hybrid of the two different manufacturers. So the manufacturer that I learned actually from watching your videos, it was Greening Donald or Greening Wire, and anyway, Greening Donald is the name I knew at the time, and the lift manufacturer that Lloyd had been the engineer on was I thought that at that time they were in Kitchener, Waterloo, but they may have been in more than one location.
Is that the Skyway?
Yeah, it was Skyways or Skiways. I
Okay.
can't remember exactly how they pronounced it, but
And then the other one you were referencing was that Greening Metal Products
yeah,
that, Murray was telling me they basically made like stuff for quarries and I
yes.
guess originally, okay. All right.
They one of the biggest products they made was screening for well, they made screening for gravel crushers, and then eventually I believe they made screening for airbags in cars. Like they were pretty diverse.
Okay, it's interesting you said it because I literally was just looking the other day and I saw something about airbags and I'm like, that can't be the same, but that's the same company?
Yeah, I don't know them well, but I know that they had migrated through
Okay,
the basically screening that's making 3/4 inch gravel down to screening that's making airbags.
right. Oh, that's fascinating. So with that, well, I'll just ask you this. The one thing I probably got everybody confused that watched the videos because I just kind of make my own terms up for the different lifts. But did you guys have a name like for the different lifts? Like I referenced that one behind the chalet as the third T-bar. But do you remember, did you guys have specific names that you named the lifts? Or if you were telling Harold to go work on a lift, how would Harold know which like lift to go to? Do you remember that kind of stuff?
I think we just called them after the runs.
Okay.
We may have called the third one the Wildcat lift because it went right beside the Wildcat.
Okay.
I'm sure we called the one that went from the top or bottom to top the main lift.
Right, the main lift. Okay.
And the one that went out of the parking lot, it was in its final location when I started working there. I know it had been in a previous location. It was, I bet we called it the Little T-Bar.
Okay. Yeah. So you were saying when we put in the Wildcat T-Bar or the third T-Bar, you guys went over to Aspen or Twin Hearts and dismantled the lift and then brought it over and
Yes,
assembled it. Okay.
we dismantled it all with the bottom terminal and the top terminal were left the same. We brought them directly over. But all of the intermediate towers, and I think we had to add a couple. We sent all the intermediate towers to skiways, and they turned them into their model of towers. They had been taller, almost every one of them, and the brackets had been bolted onto the towers. They were, in most of them, they were like a hall lift where the returning bars were higher than the bars that were going up the hill.
Okay.
And they made new cross members and maybe even the dolly carriages. They may have made those for, and the first year that we operated, the top terminal had a 6-foot bowl wheel on it because that's what a Twin Hearts had. And the next year we changed that over to an 8-foot. It just made it a little bit better operating because we had that bull wheel unloading, which was different than what had ever been done before. So,
Okay. Was the when I guess the decision was made to buy that lift, did everything go on basically that, like when they made a decision to buy the lift, is that when they started the excavating for the lift line and then you guys were over there working on taking it down, disassemble it, or then?
yeah, we disassembled it first, sent it away. We started getting the excavating done, bulldozing. Fair amount of fill moving with like a bucket loader.
Mm-hmm.
Then we well, Lloyd basically, told us where we were going to put every tower. And we poured the footings for all the towers, footings for the top and the bottom of the toe. We did that all through that summer. And then everything was brought back and reassembled.
Was the when you guys were installing that lift, was there always a plan to have that bridge or to be able to ski under it, or was that an after fact?
It was very early on.
Okay.
We weren't sure whether or not we were going to leave any skiing on that particular terrain, but we made the decision to put a bridge in fairly shortly after we started the excavating.
Okay. Yeah, I was, you know, I used to be a heavy equipment operator way back in the day, and I don't know why, but I am really impressed with at the top of the, you know, if you're at the top of the Wildcat lift or the third T-bar and you're walking back down the lift line, that way that they excavated that part of the terrain, I mean, that has stayed solid. I mean, whoever did that did a job well done, because that has not come apart whatsoever. That is so defined, and like I said, whoever did that, they knew what they're doing, and they made it to last, and it still looks fantastic.
So
this many years later,
that was a lot of moved soil, that area. We actually brought quite a bit of material off of the middle of the Wildcat up the hill to put in that area. I spent a long time in that section.
okay.
I had a little device that Lloyd had given me that was, I believe he called it an eye level. So I could look through this device and it had a little bubble inside of it. And I could look at wherever the line on that eye level was. And I knew that it was the same height as from my feet to my eye, which was around 5 feet or something like that. And so I knew if it was going uphill or not. And, you know, then I would pace off how far that point was ahead of us to see whether or not the slope was going to be right to keep going. I do remember the loader operator being a bit disappointed on a Friday when I told him we were done, and we didn't need him to come back the next week. And he was sort of like, he liked the job. So
Yeah, well, that's fascinating. But yeah, that is that section of that lift line there at the top. You know, when I found that top structure when I was walking a Bruce Trail, and I started, you know, looking around and realized that's what that was, and started going back down the lift line. I was like, man, that is, there was no ifs, ands, or buts, but that was the lift line. And like I said, the way that was built, yeah, kudos to that operator for doing that, because like I said, this many years later, it's still rock solid all the way down there. So that was fantastic.